Okay, hello everybody, it's Runescapefar. How you guys doing today? I hope you're having a good day. So, big political topic here, gun rules, gun laws, everything like that. And so, for this video I decided to dedicate an hour to research some of the gun laws around the United States. And some of my findings are rather disturbing in terms of it allows criminals to actually possess firearms. And allow really anybody to possess a firearm so long as you are over the age of 18 or 21 for handguns. So today I'm going to discuss them. Of course, I got the sources here to the right of me. You guys can't see it because I'm using my camera app versus the DDR3 recording system that I usually use. But I will of course state the site where I found it at and what it says. So let's start with this question. Is it legal to sell a gun privately? This came from consumer.findlaw.com. Federal licensed firearm dealers are required by federal law to conduct background checks on prospective buyers, but private unlicensed sellers, which would be you, me, my dad, your grandma, your best friend, sellers are not required to do this. Some states require background checks for private state sales, usually through a licensed intermediary, but others have few to no regulations of private gun sales. So that means I can have a yard sale and sell you my gun without running a background check on you. You could be a criminal for all I know, but that doesn't matter. I can legally sell that gun to you without going through a background check or any federal paperwork. That is a very big way that criminals can still receive firearms. Now, some states, as I'll show later on, do actually require a background check for this. And again, we'll cover that when we get to it. But again, the biggest problem with this is criminals can easily get a hold of guns this way legally, even though it's illegal for them to own a firearm. Since they don't do a background check, you don't know that when you're selling them the gun. Now, is it legal to buy a gun at a gun show? This came from governing.com. Gun shows or gun show background checks, state laws. Known as the gun show loophole, most states do not require background checks for firearms purchased at a gun show from private individuals. Federal law only requires licensed dealers to conduct checks. Some states' requirements are limited only to handgun purchases. So that means some states you could go to a gun show and buy any gun you want that is not a handgun and not have a background check, but if you purchase a handgun, then you will have to have a background check. So, if you look at most of these school shootings that has happened, they haven't really been done with handguns, but shotguns, assault rifles. So, my more concern is, what about those guns? Those should also be under that law of protection at gun shows. Because again, a felony, a criminal, anybody with any dangerous intent can go to a gun show and legally buy an assault rifle, a shotgun, a high-powered hunting rifle without going through any background checks. And that is, for me, a big concern for one of our gun rules. Do they do background checks at gun shows? This was from Wikipedia. I know Wikipedia is not the best choice, but here we go. Under federal law, private party sellers are not required to perform background checks on buyers, whether at a gun show or other venue. Access to the National Instant Firearm Criminal Database Check System, or the NICS, that word will come back up, is limited to the FFL holders, and the FFLs are not issued to persons that only sell firearms at gun shows. So if I strictly sold guns at gun shows and nowhere else, then I'm not required to have a FFL license. So therefore I can sell to whoever I want, whenever I want. It could be at a gun show. And that also does qualify for personal home sales. So if you come to my house, I can sell you my 12-gauge shotgun and not have to do a background check or file any federal paperwork whatsoever. Again, that is very alarming and concerning, since that, again, you don't know these people that are buying these unless you personally do a background check on them, which you legally can do. Employers do it all the time. Then you have no idea whether or not you are selling a gun to a criminal. And criminals know this, and they exploit these loopholes very well. That's why we still have criminals with guns You ask yourself, how do they get guns? Well, they go to yard sales, gun shows, and purchase them without having to have a background check. That's something that needs to be changed. Let's see. So, which states require background checks to buy a gun? This is from lawcenter.giffords.org. They state that 9 states, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Washington, and Washington, D.C. requires universal background checks at the point of sale for all sales and transfers of all class of firearms, whether they are purchased from a licensed dealer or an unlicensed seller. So this is what we need to see nationwide in every single state, that whether you are licensed or you are not licensed, as soon as you sell a gun or want to sell a gun, you have to have somebody there from the federal agency to ensure that the transaction is good, to run the background check, to ensure that you're not selling the gun to a criminal. Because honestly, again, how do you know you're not a criminal unless you run a background check? A criminal who's going to buy a gun to use it for violence ain't going to say, I'm a criminal, I served several years for assault, battery, etc., etc. I'd like to buy a gun. They don't say that. They just act like normal people. You and me just buying a gun. But their intents are much darker, and we don't know that. So that's why we need the background checks. Let's see. What can disqualify you from buying a gun? This comes from JohnsonJohnsonLaw.com. Any felony convictions will result in a prohibition to possess a firearm. Additionally, any offense designated as a crime of violence can result in a firearm ban. Crimes of violence include murder, 1st through 4th degree assault, 1st through 4th degree criminal sexual conduct, robbery, and kidnapping. So those are the felony convictions, or also any just offense in general, which I think is a great thing to have in there. You don't want these people to have guns, especially because of what they've done with said guns. That law there is federal for every state. So for those states that do require federal background checks, like if I went to, say, Gander Mountain when it was open, I had to do a federal background check to ensure that I was legally able to buy a gun. So if you go to an actual store, yes, but again, there's the whole point of the gun shows, the selling guns out of your house, or on an online auction site. You do not legally have to run background checks on the people, and that's where the loophole affects this law right here. So are NICS background checks required for the transfer of antique firearms? Now, this is my big concern here, and the biggest one is antique firearms are not considered a regulated firearm. That's why shows like Pawn Stars or I forgot what the other Pawn Stars show was, but like how they can, or any pawn shop can legally buy firearms without a license. And that is because they were made before 1898, which makes them an antique. However, just because they are an antique, as you'll see also in the next one, doesn't mean they still can't fire and shoot. I've seen several antique firearms at my local antique shop that they say it still works, just don't use modern ammunition, but you can easily modify an antique gun to use modern ammunition. Now, so with the site ATF.gov, so that's the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Agency of the government, they state that no, because weapons that meet the definition of an antique firearm are not firearms subject to the GCA license, need not conduct a background check when transferring an antique firearm. So again, antique firearms, they still work. Most of the guns I own, they do not yet meet the qualification for an antique, yet they are really old. They were like 1920, 1930, 1940, so they are old, but they are not yet classified as antiques, and therefore, if I did live in a state, one of the states where the transfers were, then I would have to get transfers from like my grandfather, because that's where a lot of them came from. So there's a bunch of paperwork for that. And since I don't live in one of those states, then he was just able to give them to me. So let's see. Okay, here's one that's very, very specific and rather disturbing. This comes from FindLaw.com. Can felons legally own a muzzle-loading gun? Now, this was a very long article, and I did read it all, and the gist of it is yes, so long as the weapon is like one produced before 1898, as it is not considered a firearm. Muzzleloaders are black powder, so black powder pistols, black powder shotguns, black powder rifles, generally muzzleloaders, that are from 1898 or still replicate that style are not considered firearms, and therefore felons, criminals can legally purchase these firearms. Now, yes, it's a muzzleloader, so you gotta load the black powder, load the ball, pack it down, put the cap in to fire it, but yet it is still a fully functional weapon that criminals can use to kill people. And they are exploiting this loophole, as well as the antique loophole, the gun show loophole, the auction loophole, all those loopholes they are exploiting, and we're doing nothing about it. We're just allowing it. So in my personal opinion, we need to close up these loopholes once and for all, so that way criminals have no legal ways of obtaining firearms of any kind, and require that all states do federal background checks for every single purchase, whether it's through a gun show or whether it's me selling you a gun online through an auction site, or you come to my house and buying it there. You gotta have a federal background check. I think that will definitely help out a lot. Now then, this is also my personal opinion based off of everything that's happened with these mass school shootings. They always say it's because of the mental stability of the person, or at least that's what they're pleading right now with that guy from the Florida school shooting. And again, my condolences to the families of the victims. That is a tragedy and should have never happened. There were a lot of red flags there that were just ignored, which shouldn't have been ignored. It could have been prevented, but due to the ignorance of these people, it was just ignored and resulting in this tragedy. So a lot of people are to blame for this. But if they're going to keep on saying that it's because of the mental stability of the person, then I personally believe that before you purchase a firearm, you should have a psychological checkup before purchasing a firearm to ensure that you are mentally stable enough to own a firearm. So that way people cannot keep on pleading that it's because I'm mentally ill and I did these things. If you are mentally okay to purchase a gun, then you cannot plead that. I also believe with the gun, or with the background checks, they should also include school records for expulsions. Once you turn 18, I know here in Missouri, you can legally buy everything but a pistol. And with saying that, if I got expelled from a school at 18 and I'm really pissed off at them and want to do something like this, what is stopping me from going to the a gun store and buying a gun? I'm with a background check. Background checks do not check for that thing. So they don't know that I was just expelled and I'm really pissed off at the school. They don't know that. So I think that that should be on there, as well as divorces, especially recent divorces with custody battles. Gun violence is used commonly with that, so by preventing people like that from buying guns, that can also reduce the tendency of violence. Also, just divorce in general, depression, if you, again with the mental stability check before you purchase a gun, that can help prevent people from buying guns to commit suicide or to murder people then commit suicide. I strongly believe that can help out a lot with the laws and everything. I also strongly believe that antique firearms should be considered under federal laws for background checks and criminal exclusion, meaning that criminals should not be allowed to buy antique firearms because they are still fully functioning guns. Whether they're black powdered or not, it's still a gun. It can still kill people. So I think that that law definitely needs to be rewritten and revised, because quite frankly, criminals, especially the ones as described here who committed these crimes, they don't deserve to have a firearm. They misused them. They used them in the wrong way for bad and evil to kill people. That's just should be just the end of the line, period. No exceptions, no loopholes, nothing. But as you just saw here, we have so many loopholes in our background checks, gun laws, that it's no wonder why people keep on saying that America is one of the loosest gun states or gun countries, is because we allow these loopholes to develop and allow criminals to have guns. It's just sad and disturbing. So I think those things, in my own personal opinion, can actually help reduce gun violence. So close up the loopholes, require psychological evaluations before purchasing a gun. It includes things such as divorces, a student's school records if they were expelled or kicked out or anything like that. Because usually with school things like that, yes, they are on your permanent record, but it wouldn't really show up in a background check if no legal laws were. And so, like, if I got in a fist fight with you and threatened to kill you, then it'll just go down as a disturbance, as reported by the school. And if the law doesn't get involved, then there's no physical documentation, a police report that states that you were in a physical altercation with this student. Unless the parents decide to file a police report, the school will not do nothing, and therefore that information is very crucial. Personally, I think that is crucial for background checks, because you have people that have committed assaults in high school and made death threats in high school, and that information never really leaves the school and for police reports unless the parents of the victims file a police report. So I think that's why that should also be included in a background check. So those things, again, with the divorce, anything, a loss of a child, a recent loss of a loved one or family member, friend, due to a tragedy or anything like that, they should not be allowed to purchase a firearm because they may commit suicide or seek vengeance. So tell me what you guys think below. If you agree with me or disagree with me, let me know in the comments below, because this is a hot topic issue, and everybody, there's a side to every story here about, yes, we should change it, no, we shouldn't change it. I think with all this evidence provided here, there are some things that need to be changed. And again, let me know if you agree. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, leave comments, and as always, have a nice day. Live, love, game on. Please, please, please be safe when using any types of firearms. Never use a firearm for hatred or vengeance or in an unsafe manner that can lead to death or suicide. I will place the link for the suicide hotline in the comments below, because I know a lot of people that deal with depression and they look at this as their way out, and it's not. It's a long-term solution to a short-term problem. There are people out there like you. You're not alone. Don't ever think you are alone. I worry about you guys all the time, so again, I just want what's best for you guys to be safe and informed. So again, please subscribe, leave comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.